I'm Margaret Miller, 78, a woman, and I watched my younger granddaughter try to ruin her sister's engagement party, which led to an act of rebellion that tore our family apart. It's a strange thing to watch the child of your child become a person you barely recognize, a person whose happiness seems to be built on the unhappiness of her own sister. But that's what I saw in Chloe year after year. And it's even stranger to watch your own daughter, a woman you raised to be kind and fair, become blind to the poison blooming right in her own home. That was my daughter, Susan, a mother who loved her children so unevenly it was like watching someone try to water a garden with a fire hose aimed at a single weed, while the most beautiful flower right next to it wilted from thirst. That flower was my Amelia. It feels like yesterday and 1,000 years ago all at once. An old woman's memory is a funny thing. It's a tapestry where some threads are vibrant and strong and others have faded to ghosts. But the thread of Chloe and Amelia's story, that one is woven in colors of fire and ice, it has not faded. If anything, it's grown brighter, starker with the passing of time. I see it all so clearly now, the pattern that was there from the very beginning. My granddaughters, Amelia and Chloe, are only 2 years apart, but they might as well have been born on different planets. Amelia, the elder, came into the world with a quiet soul. She was a thoughtful child, content to sit with a book or draw for hours, her little face a study in concentration. She felt things deeply, a well of emotion that she kept mostly hidden, but I could see it in the way her eyes would shine with unshed tears at a sad story, or the way her smile, when it came, was like the sun breaking through clouds, genuine and warming you to your bones. Then came Chloe. She arrived like a firecracker, loud and demanding and dazzling from her first breath. She was one of those babies that everyone cooed over, with a halo of blonde curls and a laugh that could charm the birds from the trees. And my daughter Susan was utterly bewitched. From that day forward, the world in their home began to tilt, slowly but surely, on Chloe's axis. The first time I saw the pattern in its ugliest form was at Amelia's 7th birthday party. Susan had worked hard on it. A princess theme, just as Amelia had dreamed of, with a bouncy castle in the backyard and a cake shaped like a turret. Amelia was so happy she was practically vibrating. She wore a pale pink dress and a little tinfoil crown, her eyes shining with the pure, unadulterated joy of a child who feels seen, who feels celebrated. For about an hour, she was the princess. Then it was time for presents. Chloe, who was 5, had been growing increasingly sullen as she watched her sister be the center of all this attention. As Amelia sat down in the grass, surrounded by her friends and a mountain of brightly wrapped gifts, Chloe made her move. She ran into the kitchen and came back holding a pair of scissors she'd managed to snatch from a drawer. Before anyone could react, she marched up to the biggest, most beautifully wrapped present, a dollhouse from my late husband and me, and started snipping at the ribbon, shouting, "My turn, I want to open it." Susan rushed over and took the scissors, but her reaction wasn't what it should have been. There was no firm correction, no taking Chloe aside for a lesson in sharing and respect. Instead, she knelt down and hugged a pouting Chloe, murmuring, "Oh, sweetie, I know it's hard to wait. You're just so excited. How about you help Amelia open her presents? You can be the official ribbon puller." I watched the light go out of Amelia's eyes. Her special moment, the culmination of her party, was now a shared duty. Chloe, appeased, sat next to her sister and proceeded to tear into every gift with a possessive glee, barely letting Amelia get a hand on them. The other children looked confused. I caught Amelia's eye, and in that moment I saw the well of her emotion fill to the brim. She didn't cry. She just looked down at her hands, her little tinfoil crown now sitting slightly askew. The princess had been dethroned. Later, when I tried to talk to Susan about it, she just waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Mom, she's just a baby. She adores her big sister. She just wants to be part of things. It's cute." It wasn't cute. It was the first stroke of a dark and selfish painting, and Susan was handing her younger daughter the brush. The years passed and the canvas filled. When Amelia was named valedictorian of her high school class, we were all bursting with pride. She had worked so hard, sacrificing parties and weekends to earn that honor. She was nervous about her speech, practicing it in front of me in my living room until the words flowed like poetry. The day of the graduation was hot and bright. Amelia looked so grown up in her cap and gown. When her name was called, I applauded so hard my hands stung. She stepped up to the podium, cleared her throat, and began. Her speech was about looking forward, about the shared future of her generation. It was beautiful, hopeful, and intelligent, but then about 2 minutes in, a commotion started in the fourth row. Chloe, who had just finished her sophomore year, suddenly slumped over in her chair, moaning dramatically. Susan was at her side instantly. "She's overheating, she's going to faint." Susan's voice was sharp with panic. People turned, heads craned. The principal looked over with concern. Amelia faltered at the podium, her voice trailing off as she watched her mother and a teacher help a dramatically wilting Chloe out of her seat and toward the exit. The focus of the entire auditorium had shifted. From the stage, all Amelia could see was the drama of her sister's sudden, convenient illness. She tried to continue, but the rhythm was broken, the spell shattered. She rushed through the rest of her beautiful speech, her voice tight. The applause at the end was scattered, distracted. Later at the celebratory dinner, Chloe was perfectly fine, laughing and holding court. "Oh my God, I thought I was going to die," she announced to the table. "It was so hot in there, I'm just so sensitive to heat, you know." Susan fussed over her, making sure she had enough water, while Amelia sat silently, picking at her food. I knew, and I think Leo, Amelia's then boyfriend, now fiancé, knew that Chloe wasn't sensitive to heat. She was sensitive to not being the center of attention. She had managed to turn her sister's crowning academic achievement into a footnote in the story of her own minor discomfort. This pattern repeated itself in ways both large and small. When Amelia got her first real job as a graphic designer, a position she'd competed for against dozens of other applicants, she called the family to share the good news. Before she could even finish her sentence, Chloe broke in on the speakerphone. "Oh, that's nice. Speaking of jobs, guess who just got asked to model for that new downtown boutique? They said I had the exact look they were going for." The rest of the conversation, steered by Susan, was about Chloe's nascent modeling career, which, like most of her ventures, fizzled out after a few weeks. But it served its purpose. It eclipsed Amelia's real, hard-won success. "So you see, when Amelia called me, her voice glowing with a joy I hadn't heard in years, to tell me that Leo had proposed, a part of me was terrified for her. She was so happy. They had gone for a hike to the overlook where they had their first date, and he had gotten down on one knee with a ring he had designed himself, a beautiful, simple sapphire the color of her eyes. Oh, Grandma," she breathed into the phone, "it was perfect. Everything was perfect." My heart soared for her and broke for her in the same beat, because I knew Chloe would be lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to prove that in their family, nothing was ever allowed to be perfectly Amelia's. And I was right. The weeks leading up to the engagement party were a rare season of sunshine for Amelia. Planning the event became her passion project. She was a designer after all, and her creativity, so often pushed to the background in her personal life, came alive. She and Leo made a wonderful team. He wasn't a man who just nodded along. He was an active partner, his practicality and steady nature a perfect balance to her artistic vision. I'd watch them at my dining table, their heads bent together over swatches of fabric and font samples for the invitations, and a deep, quiet hope would settle in my chest. This man, Leo, saw her. He truly saw the brilliant, kind, and capable woman she was, not the shadow her sister cast. He was an engineer, a man who dealt in facts and structures, and he saw the faulty structure of Amelia's family with absolute clarity. He didn't dislike Susan or Chloe, not at first. He was polite and kind, but he was observant. He saw the subtle digs, the backhanded compliments, the casual dismissals of Amelia's feelings, and unlike the rest of the family, he didn't play along. He would quietly validate Amelia, a hand on her back, a simple, "I thought what you said was really interesting, Ames," after Susan had talked over her. He was her shield, and he was teaching her slowly how to hold one for herself. The party was to be held in the garden of a small, historic inn on the outskirts of town. It was Amelia's choice, a place of quiet elegance, with stone walls covered in ivy and beds of rambling roses. She designed everything herself, from the invitations with their delicate wildflower motif to the playlists of soft jazz and classic soul. She wanted it to be intimate, a gathering of the people who truly loved and supported them. The guest list was small, maybe 50 people. Of course, Susan and Chloe were on it. There was no question of not inviting them. To exclude them would have caused a different, more immediate kind of explosion. And Amelia, bless her heart, still held onto a sliver of hope that this time, this one time, they would simply show up and be happy for her. I tried to gently manage her expectations. One afternoon, as she showed me the mock-up for the centerpieces, simple glass jars filled with fairy lights and sprigs of lavender, I asked, "Have you spoken to your mother about the arrangements?" Amelia's smile tightened just a fraction. "I tried. She mostly wanted to talk about what Chloe should wear. She's worried Chloe won't have anything appropriate and was suggesting they go on a shopping trip for Chloe." "And what did you say?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I just said, Mom, this is my party. Can we please focus on that for a minute?" And she got all flustered and said, of course, but then 2 minutes later she was asking if I thought the caterer could make a separate, gluten-free option for Chloe because she's been so sensitive to wheat lately. We both knew what Chloe was sensitive to. I sighed, placing my hand over hers. "My dear, you are building a beautiful day for yourself and Leo. Don't let anyone else's static interfere with your signal. This day belongs to you." She squeezed my hand, but I saw the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. The hope I felt was fragile. It was hope in Leo and his strength. He had a conversation with Chloe a week before the party. He told me about it later. He had taken her for coffee, just the two of them. He said he kept it simple and direct. "Chloe," he'd said, "this party means the world to Amelia. It's a huge day for us. We just want to ask that you help us keep the focus on that. Just for one night, let it be Amelia's night." According to Leo, Chloe had laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "Oh, Leo, you're so serious. Of course it's Amelia's night. I wouldn't dream of making it about me. I'm just so excited for my big sister." He said she was utterly convincing. Charming, sincere, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. He wanted to believe her. We all did. That was Chloe's greatest weapon, her ability to look you in the eye and lie with such conviction that you felt foolish for ever doubting her. But I had been watching her performance for 28 years. I knew the actress was just waiting for her cue, and the stage was being set perfectly for her grand entrance. The beautiful garden, the happy couple, the captive audience of friends and family. It was a spotlight just waiting to be stolen. The evening of the party was perfect. A soft, late summer breeze whispered through the trees, and the setting sun cast a golden glow over the garden. The fairy lights Amelia had chosen twinkled in the dusk like captured stars. Music drifted from discreetly placed speakers, and the air smelled of roses and fresh-cut grass. It was everything she had envisioned. Amelia herself looked ethereal. She wore a simple, elegant cream-colored dress, and her face, free from its usual tension, was luminous with happiness. When she looked at Leo, it was as if no one else existed. He, in turn, watched her with a look of such profound love and adoration it made my old heart ache with joy. For the first hour, everything was magical. Friends and family mingled, laughing and sipping champagne. I watched from a small wrought iron bench, a contented observer. I saw Susan flitting about, making sure everyone was having a good time, though she spent an inordinate amount of time fussing over Chloe, who had arrived late, dressed in a tight, shockingly bright red dress that stood out against the soft pastels of the evening like a fire alarm. She had a fixed, bright smile on her face, but her eyes were constantly scanning the crowd, assessing, calculating. After a while, Leo's father, a kind, jovial man, tapped his glass for a toast. He spoke warmly about his son and welcomed Amelia into their family with words that were both funny and deeply touching. Then a few of Amelia's friends from college shared a sweet, tearful toast. The atmosphere was thick with love and goodwill. I felt my anxieties begin to melt away. Maybe, just maybe, I had been wrong. Maybe Chloe would let her sister have this one perfect moment. Then it was Leo's turn. He stood next to Amelia, taking her hand. He looked around at the assembled guests, his expression open and sincere. "Thank you all so much for being here," he began, his voice steady. "It means the world to us to share this moment with you. I've known for a long time that Amelia was the person I wanted to spend my life with. She is the kindest, most brilliant, and most compassionate person I have ever known. She sees the beauty in things no one else notices, and she makes my world and the world of everyone lucky enough to know her a better place." He turned to Amelia, his eyes shining. "Amelia, when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally home. You are my home, and I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be the partner you deserve." A collective awe rippled through the garden. I felt tears welling in my own eyes. It was the most beautiful, heartfelt declaration. Amelia was looking up at him, her face a perfect portrait of love. This was it. This was her moment. Oh, and then it happened. Just as Leo raised his glass and before he could say to Amelia, another voice cut through the air, sharp and loud. Well, since we're making announcements. It was Chloe. She had pushed her way to the front of the small crowd and she was standing there, one hand placed dramatically on her stomach, the other holding her own champagne flute. Her smile was blindingly bright, a predator's smile. Susan immediately rushed to her side. Chloe, honey, what is it? Chloe's eyes swept the garden, ensuring she had everyone's complete attention. Well, she said, her voice practically singing, it seems like Leo and Amelia aren't the only ones with exciting news. I guess you could say, our family is about to get a little bigger. A wave of confused murmurs went through the crowd. Chloe let the suspense hang for a beat, her eyes locking with Amelia's. Then she beamed and dropped the bomb. I'm pregnant. For a second, there was dead silence. The only sound was the soft jazz still playing from the speakers, suddenly sounding tinny and absurd. Then chaos erupted, squeals of delight, gasps of surprise. Susan shrieked, "Oh my God, a baby," and threw her arms around Chloe. Aunts and cousins surged forward, surrounding Chloe, hugging her, congratulating her, touching her stomach. The toast, the engagement, Leo and Amelia, they were all instantly forgotten, a faded photograph from a moment ago. I didn't take my eyes off Amelia. I watched as the color drained from her face. Her beautiful, luminous smile collapsed. Her hand, which was still in Leo's, went limp. She looked utterly shell-shocked, as if she'd been physically struck. Leo stood frozen, his arms still raised for his aborted toast, his expression hardening from disbelief into a cold, quiet fury. And then I looked at Chloe. Over the shoulder of a congratulating aunt, she caught my eye, and she smirked, a small, triumphant, barely there twitch of her lips. Then, in a voice loud enough for those nearby, including Amelia and Leo, to hear, she added with a fake, self-deprecating laugh, "Sorry, guys, guess I stole the spotlight again." That's when the dam broke. My family, didn't just let it happen, they participated. They laughed at her joke. They patted her on the back. My own daughter, Susan, wiped away tears of joy for her younger daughter, completely oblivious or perhaps willfully ignorant of her elder daughter standing right there, her heart being shattered into a million pieces on what was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. The scene devolved into a spontaneous celebration of Chloe's news. The engagement party was over. It was now Chloe's pregnancy announcement party. I felt a rage so cold and so deep it frightened me. I stood up from my bench and walked over to Amelia and Leo, who were now standing alone, an island of devastation in a sea of misplaced joy. I put a hand on each of their backs. Amelia was trembling. Leo's jaw was so tight I was afraid he would crack a tooth. Neither of them said a word. They didn't have to. The betrayal was absolute, and it had been delivered with a surgeon's precision, right in front of everyone they loved. The ride home from the party was silent. Not a peaceful silence, but a heavy, suffocating one, thick with unspoken pain and anger. I sat in the back of Leo's car, watching the reflection of the streetlight slide over Amelia's pale, still face in the passenger seat window. She stared out at the passing darkness, her body rigid. Leo drove with a grim focus, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The beautiful night, which had started with so much promise, had ended in a wreckage of hurt. When we got back to their apartment, Amelia walked straight to her bedroom without a word and closed the door. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. Leo sank onto the sofa, running both hands through his hair and letting out a long, shuddering breath. "I can't believe her," he said, his voice low and ragged. "I honestly cannot believe the audacity, and everyone, they just went along with it." "I know," I said softly, sitting in the armchair opposite him. "I am so sorry, Leo, for my family's cruelty." "It's not your fault, Margaret," he said, looking up at me, his eyes full of a pain that was entirely for Amelia. "It's this system they've all built around Chloe, where she's the sun and everyone else is just a planet forced into her orbit. And Susan, God, Susan, she looked so happy, she didn't even look at Amelia once." He was right. In her excitement over becoming a grandmother, Susan had completely erased her other daughter from the scene. A minutes later, as if on cue, Leo's phone buzzed. It was a text from Susan. He read it aloud, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Such a wonderful night, so much to celebrate. I'm just bursting with joy. Talk tomorrow. XOXO." It was so clueless, so utterly tone-deaf that it was almost comical, but we weren't laughing. She either has no idea what she did, Leo said, shaking his head, or she knows exactly what she did and doesn't care. It's both, I said, the truth of it settling like a stone in my stomach. She has convinced herself that this is just how things are, that Chloe's needs are simply more urgent, more important. She doesn't see it as cruelty. She sees it as maintenance. I stayed for another hour, hoping Amelia would come out, but she didn't. Leo and I sat in the living room, talking in hushed tones, piecing together the broken parts of the evening. Before I left, I stood outside Amelia's bedroom door. I could hear soft, choked sobs from within. It was the sound of a heart breaking, and it was a sound I had heard from her in different ways her entire life. I wanted to knock, to go in and hold her, but I knew she needed to be alone. Some wounds are too raw for anyone else's touch. The next day, Leo called me. His voice was strained. "Margaret, can you come over? Amelia, she's not doing well." When I arrived, the apartment was dark, the curtains drawn against the bright morning sun. Amelia was on the sofa, curled into a ball under a thick blanket, wearing the same dress from the night before. Her face was puffy from crying, her eyes vacant. She looked smaller, diminished. Leo was hovering nearby, looking lost and helpless. "Ames, honey, your grandmother is here," he said gently. She didn't seem to register my presence. She just stared at the wall, her voice flat and lifeless when she finally spoke. "I'm calling it off." "Calling what off?" Leo asked, though we both knew the answer. "The wedding," she said, "all of it. We'll go to the courthouse or elope. I don't want a wedding. I don't want a party. I don't want a celebration. What's the point? She'll just find a way to ruin it. She'll probably go into labor during my vows." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled sob. "Don't say that," Leo pleaded, his voice cracking. "We're not going to let her win. This is our life." "But it's not, don't you see?" she said, finally sitting up, her eyes flashing with a desperate, painful energy. "It's never just my life, it's always Amelia and Chloe. It's always my turn being interrupted by her, my turn, from birthday presents to graduation to my own engagement. There is no space that is just mine. She colonizes everything, and my mother hands her the flag." She buried her face in her hands. "I'm so tired, Grandma. I'm just so tired of fighting for a little sliver of light. It's exhausting. And last night I realized I'll never win. The game is rigged, so I quit. I don't want to play anymore." This was her deepest point of despair. It wasn't just about a ruined party. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as secondary. It was the crushing realization that her own mother was a willing participant in her erasure. She truly believed her only option was to retreat, to make her life so small and quiet that it offered no stage for Chloe to perform on, no spotlight for her to steal. I saw her future in that moment, a series of quiet surrenders, a life lived in the shadows to avoid conflict, a slow, sad fading of her own vibrant spirit. And I knew with every fiber of my being that I could not let that happen. I let her cry. I sat beside her on the sofa, simply holding her hand, letting the storm of her grief run its course. Leo paced the room, a caged tiger of protective fury. When her sobs finally subsided into weary silence, I knew it was my time to speak. Not with platitudes or empty reassurances, but with a truth she needed to hear. "Amelia," I began, my voice quiet but firm, making her look at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed and full of defeat. "When I was 25, my older sister, your great-aunt Carol, got engaged. I was to be her maid of honor. Carol was a lot like Chloe, not in the same malicious way perhaps, but she had a flair for the dramatic. The world revolved around her, and my mother, her mother, encouraged it." Amelia and Leo both looked at me surprised. I rarely spoke of my own early family life. "Carol wanted a huge, expensive wedding, far beyond what my parents could afford, but she was relentless. She cried, she manipulated, she made everyone miserable until they caved. My father, a quiet man, took a second job on the weekends to help pay for it. I was working as a secretary, saving every penny for a down payment on a little house for your grandfather and me. Carol knew this. One evening, she came to me, tears in her eyes, saying the caterer had miscalculated and they were short 500. Dread dollars, a fortune back then. She said the wedding would be ruined if she couldn't pay it by the next day. She begged me to lend her the money from my house fund. What did you do? Amelia whispered. I said no, I said simply. It was the first time in my life I had ever said no to her. She exploded. She called me selfish, jealous, spiteful. She told my mother I was trying to ruin her happiness. My mother called me weeping, begging me to just give Carol the money to keep the peace. That phrase, keep the peace. I heard it 1,000 times growing up. I looked directly into Amelia's eyes, and I realized in that moment that keeping the peace was just a code for letting Carol win. It wasn't peace, it was a hostage situation, and my happiness was the ransom, so I held firm. I told my mother that I loved my sister, but I would not set myself on fire to keep her warm. The wedding went on, of course. They found the money somewhere else, but something changed. Carol and my mother were cold to me for a while, but I had drawn a line. I had chosen myself. And your grandfather, God rest his soul, told me it was the moment he knew for sure he was going to marry me, because I had a backbone. I squeezed Amelia's hand. You are not running from a fire, my dear. You are standing in the middle of your own beautiful life, and you are letting someone else convince you that you're not allowed to enjoy the warmth. Quitting isn't the answer. Eloping is just a form of quitting. It's letting them dictate the terms of your life, even in your rebellion. You think you're escaping, but you're just building your new life on a foundation of their victory. A flicker of something new appeared in Amelia's eyes. The fog of despair was beginning to lift, replaced by a glimmer of contemplation. It was Leo who spoke next. He stopped pacing and came to kneel in front of her. She's right, Ames, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I fell in love with you, not a smaller, quieter version of you, not the version that hides. I fell in love with the brilliant, creative, passionate woman who designed this whole party, who dreams of starting her own design firm, who deserves to have every happy moment she's ever earned. Running away to a courthouse, that's not us. We don't have to give them the wedding they ruined, but we can't let them take away our right to celebrate our life our way. He took a deep breath and a slow, clever smile spread across his face. It was the first smile I'd seen in this apartment in 24 hours. So let's not elope, he said, his eyes twinkling. Let's do something else. Let's not have a wedding that they can ruin. Let's make an announcement they never saw coming, not as revenge, but as a liberation. Amelia looked from Leo's determined face to my steady gaze. The despair in her expression was slowly, but surely being replaced by something else. It was the look of a person who had been pushed to the very edge and had finally decided, instead of jumping, to turn around and face what had pushed her. What kind of announcement? She asked, her voice no longer lifeless but laced with a fragile, dangerous curiosity. And so the plan was born, not in a fit of anger, but in a quiet moment of profound clarity. It was a plan to stop playing a rigged game and to start a new one entirely, a game where they made all the rules. The resolve settled in the room, calm and strong. The struggle was over. The rebellion was about to begin. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of quiet, focused activity. The atmosphere in Amelia and Leo's apartment had transformed. The heavy gloom was gone, replaced by a current of electric energy, the kind that comes from a decision made and a path chosen. Amelia was a different person. The victim had vanished, and in her place was a strategist. Her creative energy, which she had poured into planning the ill-fated party, was now channeled into this new project, their declaration of independence. Leo, ever the engineer, handled the logistics. He spent hours on his laptop, researching neighborhoods, apartment listings, and job opportunities in a city they had both dreamed of moving to one day, Portland, Oregon. It was a place known for its creative spirit and its distance, both literal and figurative, from their current lives. The one day had become now. He was methodical and efficient, building the scaffolding of their new life while Amelia designed its facade. Her task was to create the announcement. It was not going to be a simple, angry email. It had to be a statement. It had to be beautiful, elegant, and unassailable. It had to be pure Amelia. She sat at her computer, her face illuminated by the screen, and I watched her work. She chose a design that was clean and modern, using the same wildflower motif from her engagement invitations, a deliberate, symbolic choice. She was taking back her own aesthetic, reclaiming it from the wreckage of the party. Although wording was crucial. They wrote it together, debating every phrase, every comma. I acted as their editor, their sounding board. We wanted a tone that was not accusatory or vengeful, but firm, happy, and utterly final. It was a masterclass in polite, devastating truth. The email was designed to look like a formal announcement card. At the top, in a graceful script, it read, "A new chapter for Amelia and Leo." Below it was a stunning, professional photo of the two of them. One Leo had taken with a tripod a few weeks earlier on a hike, both of them laughing, the sun in their hair. They looked happy and free. Well, then the text, "To our dear friends and family." The past week has been a time of great reflection for us. It has brought into focus what truly matters as we begin our life together, building a partnership based on mutual respect, joy, and the freedom to create our own path. With that in mind, we are thrilled to announce that we are starting our adventure sooner than planned. We have accepted new opportunities and will be relocating to Portland, Oregon, effective immediately. We are excited to build our home, our careers, and our future in a new city that we can discover together. We will be getting married in a private ceremony once we are settled. While we have decided to forgo a traditional wedding celebration, we will carry your well wishes with us as we take this next step. This is not a goodbye, but a new beginning. We look forward to sharing our journey with you from afar. With love and excitement, Amelia and Leo. And then the final, perfect, brutal touch, a postscript at the very bottom in a smaller, simpler font. P.S. to our family in town, we wish Chloe all the health and happiness in the world as she begins her own journey into parenthood. We are so excited to be future aunts and uncles from afar. It was brilliant, it was a work of art. It didn't mention the party, it didn't mention the pregnancy announcement. It didn't place a single drop of blame. It simply announced their happiness and their departure, and in doing so it rendered Chloe's drama completely irrelevant. It took her weapon, her pregnancy, and turned it into a polite, distant well-wishing. It wasn't a counterattack, it was a strategic withdrawal from the battlefield altogether. They were refusing to fight on her terms. They were refusing to fight at all. The night they sent it, the three of us gathered around the laptop. "Are you ready?" Leo asked Amelia, his hand hovering over the mouse. She took a deep breath and nodded, a small, firm smile on her face. "I'm ready." Well, he clicked send. The email went out to the same 50 people who had been at the party. For a moment, we all just sat there in silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. It was done. The first stone had been cast into the placid, toxic waters of the family pond. We had no idea how big the ripples would be, but we knew the ensuing storm was a necessary one, a cleansing one. For the first time in a long time, Amelia looked truly, deeply peaceful. The silence lasted for exactly 17 minutes. Then Amelia's phone began to vibrate against the coffee table, a frantic, angry buzzing. The screen lit up with a name that made us all tense, CHLOE. Amelia looked at the phone, then at me, then at Leo. He gave a slight nod. "You can do this," he mouthed. "Speakerphone." Amelia took a breath, her face a mask of calm, and answered the call. Before she could even say hello, Chloe's voice erupted from the speaker, shrill and furious. "What the hell, Amelia? What is this? What is this email?" "It's an announcement," Amelia said, her voice even. "I thought it was pretty self-explanatory." "Self-explanatory? You've ruined everything," Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking with rage. "This was supposed to be my time, my special time. Everyone was so excited about the baby, and you just pull this, you're moving to Oregon, you did this on purpose to steal my thunder." The sheer, breathtaking lack of self-awareness was almost funny. Leo had to physically bite his lip to keep from laughing. I just sat, marveling at the distorted reality Chloe had constructed for herself, where she was the perpetual victim. "Chloe," Amelia said, and her voice was a revelation. It held no anger, no defensiveness. It was the calm, patient voice of an adult speaking to a child having a tantrum. "This has nothing to do with you." "It has everything to do with me," Chloe screamed back. "You were jealous that everyone was happy for me at your stupid party, so you concocted this insane plan to make it all about you again. You're so selfish. You can't stand for anyone else to have the spotlight, can you?" This was the moment. The old Amelia would have crumbled. She would have apologized, backtracked, tried to smooth things over. But the new Amelia held her ground. "No, Chloe," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. That's you, that has always been you, but I'm not playing that game anymore. Leo and I are going to build a life where we are the priority. I am genuinely happy for you and the baby, and I hope you get all the attention and celebration you need. But my life is not going to be the supporting act to yours anymore. We're moving, we're getting married, we are happy, and that's it. I have to go now, we have a lot of packing to do. And with that, before Chloe could even form another hysterical syllable, Amelia hung up. She stared at her phone for a long moment, her eyes wide. Then a slow, incredulous smile spread across her face. "I did it," she whispered. "I actually did it." Leo wrapped her in a fierce hug, lifting her off the ground. "You were amazing," he said into her hair. "Absolutely amazing." The second call, of course, came to me. It was my daughter Susan, and she was crying. "Mother, what is going on? Amelia is moving. She canceled the wedding. Chloe is an absolute wreck. She says Amelia said horrible things to her. How could you let this happen?" The blame, as always, was deflected. It wasn't about Chloe's behavior or Susan's enablement. It was about my failure to control Amelia, my failure to keep the peace. "Susan," I said, and my voice was tired but unyielding, "I didn't let anything happen. Amelia is a 30-year-old woman who has made a decision to live her own life, a life where she isn't constantly made to feel like a secondary character. You were at the party, you saw what happened." "What happened?" Susan said, her voice full of genuine confusion. "We got some wonderful news. The whole family is thrilled for Chloe." "And what about Amelia?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Were you thrilled for her? Did you notice her standing there with her fiancé after her moment was stolen and mocked? Did you even look at her face?" There was a silence on the other end of the line. For the first time, I think a crack appeared in the wall of her denial. "Chloe was just excited," she finally stammered, the excuse sounding weak even to her own ears. "No, Susan," I said, delivering the final, painful truth. "She was cruel, and you and the rest of the family applauded her for it. This isn't Amelia's fault or my fault or Leo's fault. This is the consequence of years of you teaching Chloe that her wants are more important than her sister's needs. Amelia isn't running away from you. She's running towards a life where she is allowed to be happy. You should try to be happy for her. It might be the first time you've ever truly done so." I ended the call. I knew the conversation wasn't over, that there would be months, maybe years of fallout. But the most important part was done. The truth had been spoken and the cage door had been opened. The story ends not with a big family reunion or a tearful reconciliation. Real life is messier than that. It ends with an email I received 2 months later. It was a single photo. Amelia and Leo standing on a rocky Oregon beach, the Pacific Ocean roaring behind them. They were wearing simple clothes, holding hands, and on their fingers were two plain, beautiful wedding bands. They weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at each other, and they were laughing. They were free, and I, their old grandmother, sitting alone in my quiet house, felt a sense of painful, profound peace. The tapestry of our family was torn, perhaps irrevocably, but one beautiful, vibrant thread had been pulled free from the tangled, toxic pattern and was finally being woven into a new design, a design of its own making. And it was beautiful. For a long time, I thought a family was like a boat, that my job as the matriarch was to make sure we all stayed in it, no matter how turbulent the water got, no matter how many people were rocking it. I thought success meant arriving at the shore with everyone still on board. I was wrong. A family isn't a boat, it's a garden. You can't force a rose to grow in the shade of a poison oak tree just because they share the same soil. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is help that rose transplant itself to a place where it can finally get some sun. It's not about keeping the peace. It's about cultivating happiness, even if it means the garden looks different than you once imagined.